This episode of the Cost of Living Abroad pod is brought to you by Awesome. Today we're talking to Andrew Fraser, an Aussie who traded home for Vietnam a decade ago, dabbled in startups, and then jumped headfirst into the YouTube game. He's gone viral exposing poisoned food supplies in Indonesia and India, gone undercover in the illicit shark meat trade, and he even hunted field rats and ate them in Vietnam and Thailand. His channel has exploded from 10,000 to nearly 500,000 subscribers in just 2 years, and today he reveals how he used the cost of living abroad to start a profitable YouTube channel and business after appearing on his friend Sonny Side's show, The Best Ever Food Review Show. I'm Evan.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to the Cost of Living Abroad pod. So I'm super pumped to share your story, talk to you, and share with my audience as well. I'm so blown away by your channel because, one, I think the first time I looked at your channel on YouTube about 1.5 or 2 years ago, you're around like 10 or 15,000 subscribers. So you're close to 400,000 or 500,000 now. You're only at, I checked today, exactly 100 videos, which is pretty mind-boggling. On top of that, for me, there's this like incredible thing that you're doing as an expat or someone living in Vietnam, which is that the majority of people here end up in a bubble, right? Or in some sort of expat, like cultural bubble, or maybe like me, they have a wife and they, they branch out a little bit. But your whole thing here seems to be the exact opposite of that, right? Like you made a career, a life path of like intentionally going out of your comfort zone and like leaning as far as possible into the culture shock and into like cultural immersion, really.
Yeah, it sounds about right. Like, first of all, thank you very much. It's like every now and then I have to like look back and see like, oh, I have actually come a long way, because it can be, when you're in the thick of it, just like, shit, this is never going to work. It's so much work, whatever. And then every now and then you zoom out and you're like, man, it's only been a couple of years. Things are going pretty good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that feels nice. And then on the Zag kind of thing, the cultural shock type angle, that's my jam. I don't know. I've always that's part of why I moved to Asia. That's why I've always been drawn to Asia. I think that's why I'm so kind of like in love with traveling this region. Is culture shock. Like to me, that's what I'm after, man. I want that otherworldly, just like mind-blowing, how is this reality type vibe. And when I find that, that's my like travel nirvana. And so like, and if I'm able to like capture that on film and share that, then I'm truly in heaven, right? Okay. So it's like, finding those things that feel otherworldly, that feel dystopian, and being able to share that, that's the dream. And like, I'm so happy when I can achieve that.
It's the inflection point sort of learning is all about challenging yourself, right? Plateaus, challenges, moving up. If you set out, in other words, to make yourself intentionally uncomfortable, what's the inflection point? Like, where is back home? Was there sort of like a moment where you're like, I got to do it, I got to take that big step?
But I was born in Hong Kong, so I have some level of a weird connection to Chinese culture. I wanted to film there soon as well. It's true. Like last time I was in Hong Kong, I was 14, and I feel like Hong Kong's a place that I desperately want to go back to and desperately want to shoot, because it's like I have all these photos from when I was a kid and stuff. I only lived in Hong Kong till I was like 5, and then England and then Australia. So I've sort of, even as a kid, bounced around a lot. But again, we'd visit Hong Kong every now and then for like a family reason or something like that. So I did go back, and even though it was just very, again, I don't actually remember anything of living in my life. I do remember the subsequent visits. I don't know why, I still feel some connection to Hong Kong. I don't remember anything from being a kid. I remember more trips like going back with my, like later in life when we'd revisit, and at the time we were living in the UK. And like I remember specifically, like I have a vivid memory of like probably, or one of the first times I ate street food. I mean, my dad took me to just like a corrugated iron shack, sat down, he had like a giant twirly beer. This is my memory of it now. I have no idea of what we ate. I just remember it like just being like this crazy otherworldly setting, and and then I remembered the markets there. Like I became addicted to negotiating for just trash at markets. So who knows what it was, like cards and whatnot, like just like the bartering, and so I guess like quite quickly I loved the energy of it as well. Like in recent trips I'd go back and I'd try to find like the oddest, craziest t-shirt I could find, just some like, I don't know, Squid Ink product, or some local brand. Yeah, I loved Hong Kong when I'd revisit. I wouldn't say I grew up. I mean, again, like these are like I'd almost put it as like holidaying in, but I have a lot of weird personal missions there. I would love to go back and like find a house, or the area at least, because I imagine the house is probably gone where I grew up or when I was there, and certain things like that. So I do have like a number of personal missions that are on the list to do. It'll happen very soon.
Like, so I've been here now for 11 years in Vietnam, so it's been a minute. And it was very much like an intentional move, an intentional kind of decision to use the leverage that Asia gives you to try and do something creative, or at least to try and build something that was my own. So I've always done content marketing, but usually on the far more like marketing side of things. So I came over here building affiliate websites, doing like written content, and got distracted like many like expats do. You try and do your own thing, you get kind of sucked in, I think, to the opportunity that somewhere like Vietnam presents. I joined a startup that didn't work out. I did more contract work to kind of make ends meet along the way. But sort of like getting in front of camera and doing video content was like a pretty big leap. And I think I only really got there through like being forced on camera with my friend Sonny, who just has like a huge channel a few times, and sort of realizing just how hard it is, how challenging it is, but also just how rewarding it is. Like, I think when you have a final published piece of video work, there's nothing that is as satisfying to me as that. Creating content's always been my thing, but video, very new. And especially in the entertainment side of things. Yeah.
Where is back home?
I'm from Australia, Brisbane, Gold Coast type area on the East Coast. And I just had like, I remember having like a really shitty office job, like, standard accounting type thing, working for a university, and just kind of hating life in general. Just this kind of, I think you can earn nominally a high amount of money on paper and just still have like no time and like just not enjoy your life at all. I remember just thinking like, man, I'm living my entire life just for the weekends, and when the weekends roll around, even the whole weekend's gone. You got to mow the lawn, you got to clean the boat, you got to take the car in for maintenance. It's just endless. It's not just the cost of living in somewhere like Australia, it's the time expense. And I knew that I wanted to separate from my job and do my own thing in the sort of like, at that time again in the content marketing world. And I just thought, there's no way I can do it here in Australia. It was, even back then, I imagine now it's even harder.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, it was just too hard to buy your time back. And so I took a very deliberate trip to Southeast Asia everywhere to sort of like scout out locations, to see like, all right, where is that perfect balance of like livability, culture, but also somewhere where I don't have to cook, I don't have to clean, I can outsource my laundry, I can just get rid of that shit so that I can focus on what was important to me, which was trying to make it, doing something creative. And so again, like eventually it worked out. It took me a while to get there, I think, to where I am now.
Just a quick heads up, if you're planning to work online or start a business abroad in Southeast Asia, like Andrew and I, Singapore is actually one of the best places in the world to do that, especially if you're a digital nomad, coach, consultant, or a YouTuber like either of us. That's where Awesome comes in. Awesome will help you register a legit business, set up your taxes and accounting, and stay compliant with zero stress. I use them personally for all my back-end accounting and incorporation services. Their dashboard is clean, their customer support is fast, and they make the boring stuff feel easy. Just use the QR code on screen right now, or the link below in the description to get 16% off when you set up your business with Awesome. Whether you're freelancing or going full nomad CEO, Awesome makes your life simple, scalable, and legal wherever you and your business are, in Southeast Asia or the world.
But I think the plan was solid initially, and there's a lot of distractions in Asia, but that was the plan, and that is how it's worked out. And I have like no desire to leave.
So was Vietnam your first landing spot?
No, I mean, again, so I took maybe 3 months. I sort of came over and I checked out everywhere, like Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand. I can't even remember, just everywhere Southeast Asia. I sort of went as like, again, like a holiday, but just kind of check the vibe.
Yeah.
And then went back to Australia and thought like, all right, Vietnam was the place that really stood out to me. It had like the most interesting culture. Back then it felt like much more Wild Westy as well. 11 years ago, there was like nowhere near the level of convenience you have here now. And I think the go-to at the time was like Chiang Mai, Thailand was very popular. Bangkok, even Thailand, still obviously super popular. Yeah. But there was something that appealed to me about the Vietnamese side of things, in that it felt less explored. And I mean, it was still, you know, don't get me wrong, it was still very friendly to foreigners and stuff like that. But it wasn't what it is now. You know, you didn't have Grab, you didn't have like instant convenience. You sort of had to learn some of the language. English has gotten a lot better. You know, a lot of the Western convenience wasn't there yet. Like now, I mean, there's a million like Western grocery stores. There's not that much you can't get here. So yeah, but that appealed to me at the time.
While living in Australia and teaching there on like the work abroad thing,
yeah,
I have my first Southeast Asian experience, classic banana pancake thing, right? Loudon land in Khao San Road in Bangkok, and then do the trail. And Vietnam, for whatever reason, was actually one place I missed. I just didn't come here on my sort of original Southeast Asia trip. So I moved here in 2019, about a year before COVID hit. What about then? What about 10 years ago?
I mean, 10 years ago, I mean, I barely remember. I remember back then as well, I was on like a shoestring budget. So, but you could really make it work. Like I remember I was paying like $250 a month for rent in some apartment. And again, you're eating like, I don't know, $1 pho every day, and you know, going to coffee shops like this. It's the cost is so low, it's almost not worth mentioning, right? I mean, you major cost of like buying a motorbike. I think you could. Back then, I was probably easily getting my entire life under like $700 a month, probably. You know, like maybe even less. You know, because it was just, I just was so strict on the budget back then. And I don't know that I really had to be. It was just that like I had a certain amount of runway, and I knew that I had to make it work. In a weird way, I do think like Vietnam can be a bit more expensive on the like a housing front. Yeah, I don't know, your major expenses like maybe an apartment or a house, and then food is whatever you kind of want it to be. And I don't think the food side of things has really changed that much. Like it's still dirt cheap if you want to go the street food angle.
You left like a full-time office position, like salaried money, and you came with no income.
It wasn't like no income. So I was building affiliate marketing websites, basically like Amazon affiliate stuff. And so like I had a fleet of websites that was making me some level of passive income. And the idea was to like really flesh that out and grow that out. And this is what I mean about like the distractions and the side quests, is it's sort of, I took the position of joining a startup here as the head of marketing. And I think when you come to somewhere like Vietnam and you see what you were just talking about, like that insane level of growth, and like I remember, you know, I'd go back home to Australia for like 2 weeks and I'd come back and it'd feel like half the street was different already. You know, it was just like, it was just so insane. And you sort of get sucked into the story, I think. I think originally I came here with this idea of earn dollars, spend Vietnamese dong. And that equation should always work out for you, right? Yeah. And then somewhere along the way, you just kind of you fall in love with the growth story. And I sort of made the gamble to join a startup as the head of marketing and sort of take over that. And it grew very rapidly, and it quickly blew up as well, you know? So it was sort of, I don't regret that time. Like it was a fun time, and I think like it's cool to take those gambles at various points in your life, and it's probably was the right time in my life to take that kind of a gamble. But yeah, that was what sort of like distracted me, I think, from focusing on building something that was entirely my own. And you know how those things are. They're like all the mistakes lead to where you are now, so it's hard to say that you regret them. But again, like I think that there is such a temptation to do something local when you first move to Asia, because you see the potential and you see the growth. And I think in general that's a mistake, and that the idea of being able to do the whole earn dollars, spend dom type mechanic is the way to go.
Like the classic geo arbitrage or something. Was this like, you read Tim Ferriss, The 4-Hour Work Week, that type of like, and you're like,
it was exactly that, right? It was like, it was Ferriss, 4-Hour Work Week. It was like the early stages of like the digital nomad era, I think. And there was just like, you know, there were forums, people talking about this, doing this online. And so I just thought like, fuck it, man. It sounds way better than my life in Australia. I want to try and do this. And again, I think now it's like, it's so much easier now. Like I think like you're almost crazy to not give it a try if you're interested in this kind of lifestyle. But yeah, it was just like seeing other people doing it and just being like, right, I want to make that a reality.
My sort of the difference between the digital nomad thing and my own experience as an expat or living abroad is that I almost always had in-person jobs. So like my very first experience was like post 2008 crash. You know, I was a recent college grad. The economy was like worse than fucked in
Yeah,
North
yeah.
America.
Yeah.
And I ended up in Mexico just with like, I went with $3,000 and was like, I'll figure it out.
Yep.
And yeah, I guess now I think of it almost as like an analog nomad thing, right? Where it was a similar sort of momentum or idea. The idea was essentially to be able to author your own life. You're taking a huge risk and sort of trying to power through risk aversion, but the reward is that you get to have this creative freedom over who you are, over what your life looks like. I'm interested in how culturally you adjusted at first. Were you here in Saigon?
Yeah, so my total stint here has been, originally I did 4 years in Saigon.
Yeah.
I moved to Hoi An for 6, and now I've come back here since really starting the channel, mainly for hiring purposes. But yeah, how did I adjust originally? I've got to admit, I think I loved it right away. Again, maybe it helped that I'd really scouted the other countries and just sort of felt most attached to the Vietnamese culture. But there was just something about it. I am able to really feed off the energy of cities, the crazy, hectic energy. And I also do like really peaceful countrysides. I sort of hate the suburban in-between that you find in Australia a lot, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of spaced out lives. So either of the two extremes is my friend. And Saigon, yeah, it's like that overload of energy and noise and chaos. But then you find these beautiful cafes that are tucked away down alleyways. And I started learning the language quite quickly, and trying all the different foods, and it really resonated with me. It did. And I also never really did the bounce around nomad thing. I always knew that I was there for the geo arbitrage. So I never really traveled as much as I traveled around Southeast Asia as much as I do now, obviously.
How did you make friends? Did you enroll in Vietnamese language lessons, or did you
Yeah, I did actually. So yeah, I did language lessons and stuff. That was not really to make friends, and I don't know that I really did at the time. And I think probably even now, most people, 80-90% of people that were my age were English teachers, and I just wasn't, And so I never really got in with that crowd. But there were events on Saigon Outcast at the time was big, so you try and hang out in those circles. And I mean, there were a few things that I did semi-deliberately just because you want to have fun, right? I would play pickup basketball at South Saigon International.
Oh, yeah.
There's some dance groups here that I joined. What else did I do? I don't know. I just sort of naturally made friends. I don't know that I ever really struggled on that front. And dating even back then was super. I mean, Tinder still existed, so it's just but just meeting people. I don't know that you're gonna run into trouble trying to date in Southeast Asia, and if you do, you might have bigger problems. It was kind of tricky. I remember, and maybe it's a little. I think now Vietnamese youth are pretty much more modern, I'd say. But even at the time, I set myself pretty hardcore rules. I would only date girls that were educated overseas. And it was I know that was crazy, but it just very quickly I realized that while you can have friends and hang out and do whatever with people who are very culturally distinct from you, the idea of having a relationship with someone that's that, especially back then, is just it's really, really very, very different. And I think people don't realize how different all the cultures are around Southeast Asia, but Vietnamese society is very conservative, incredibly conservative. And so people here still to this day get married incredibly young. Often they will end up marrying their first or second boyfriend, girlfriend. And obviously you have also the complete other end of the spectrum. But I'm just saying traditional families were very much like that. And so I don't know, I just found it a lot easier, and it helped with the English, of course, but I just made that rule early on, and it helped a lot, and it wasn't hard. The Vietnamese diaspora is so massive that I found it a lot easier to get along and vibe with somebody that had spent the last 4 to 6 years studying in France or the US or something like that.
So tell me about your whole YouTube journey, your journey as a documentarian, I guess.
Coming out of COVID, I didn't have a job here, and I sort of needed to do something different, and I'd always wanted to try and give YouTube a shot because of having gone on friends' channels and things like that, and so it was kind of a perfect time to really give it a go. And I did a very similar thing. I had a pretty big chunk of change saved up, and so I was just kind of all right, let's just go whole hog into this again. I didn't really know what to do. I dicked around doing historical stories around items. I collect vintage watches, but watches are my hobby, and they have been a big passion for a long time. And so I thought maybe this is it, and then kind of quickly realized that this is really hard. and that it's such a small niche as well. I mean, I love that stuff. I love vintage gear in general, and I think telling the stories behind it is kind of interesting. I just don't think I was ready for it as like a filmmaker or as a creator yet. It's just so much work. It's really, really tough. And it also wasn't naturally complementary to the other like opportunities I had, like frequently going on the Best Ever Food Review Show, which was much more food and travel focused. I think like it was like way more of a layup for me from like an educational standpoint. Whenever I ran into an issue, just having a friend who could like had so much experience that could answer that for you was massive to lean into. And then the fact that so much of the audience that knew me at that time was coming from a travel channel, like it was crazy to not do something that was more travel and food focused. So it probably took me a few episodes to kind of like really realize that. Like the COVID period in Vietnam was like one of the fondest experiences I've had in my life. I loved it. Like it was obviously stressful at times for everyone, but there were big periods in Vietnam where you had no lockdowns at all, when the rest of the world was completely locked down because there were 0 cases. So Vietnam also locked down, but they locked down incredibly hard and incredibly early. So like we had these big, like I went on massive motorbike trips twice. I did a huge bike trip through the north with Sonny on the Hai Yang Loop. Usually it's like a conveyor belt of tourists now. We had the whole place to ourselves. Yeah, I mean, that's where I really started to like think about and start filming and think about getting creative. I just think, the impulse to go back to Australia definitely wasn't there. And then the way that the Vietnamese government executed it, or at least the way that it played out for people here, I think, at least if you're in Hoi An, was like, it couldn't have been more ideal compared to just about anywhere else.
Yeah. I think probably the first time I ever saw you on a video is, and I don't know, maybe it was filmed as 2 separate trips, but it's like, like a massive north to south compilation motorbike tour of you and Sonny on the Best Ever Food Review Show.
I've done 2 separate motorbike trips with Sonny that are on film, on camera, and we've done many more off camera. So like, I don't know exactly which one you saw, but I mean, that's like a huge passion of mine. And I do it much less now, but mainly for time reasons and because it is wildly unsafe. But like I absolutely love motorbiking in remote Vietnam. Like that Da Nang, Hoi An area, like getting up into the mountains there and like hanging out with the minority tribes there. I did so much stuff with the Katu people up there, especially the Taoi. And I think it's so underexplored, like especially central Vietnam. Everyone only goes along the coast. I don't even think many people in Da Nang know that they just go like an hour into Prao and they're in this whole other world. So yeah, like doing that off camera, like massive passion of mine, loved it. Doing that with Sonny on camera, also awesome. Being able to share some of that, what we do in our like private lives, but in a much more like camera friendly way. And then I think that also naturally led into my channel as well when I finally started to see what I really loved about creating content. Most of my stuff is usually about finding a culture, and it's more about highlighting the culture than like than the main subject of the video, like the food or a making process or something like that. So yeah, and a lot of my early stuff was in that area, like getting up into the Katu tribes.
What was your original point for, I don't know what the word is, for your point of contact, your point of like discovery that there was something outside of Vietnamese culture here and you wanted to learn about it, to be a part of it?
And when I first came here, I did like the tourist route. I'd been up to Sapa, so I'd seen the huge Hmong communities. And then once you really start appreciating what motorbikes can do for you here, like I don't really think you've seen Vietnam until you get on a motorbike. And again, I think that the vast majority of people who travel Vietnam see like Saigon, somewhere in the central, like Nha Trang or Da Nang. They'll see Hanoi, and then they'll either go to Sapa or Ha Long Bay, and that's it, right? And that is like such a tiny fraction of the country, and especially in the north. Like if you go, the north to me is like the jewel of Vietnam, but so are the central mountain towns. I mean, those places are absolutely magic. So, but I mean, if you go into the mountains in the north, you will just run into like one village is this ethnicity, another is another, and they will all speak Vietnamese, especially nowadays, but maybe the old people don't speak it that great. And yeah, just seeing those like the different outfits, the different colors, the different foods, like all that stuff, I loved it. And again, I just like that feeling, like it's just, you're getting more lost. Like, it's more culture shock. It's more otherworldly.
We drove all the way to Pulum, and that for me was like definitely a crossing of a threshold into a part of Vietnam that I hadn't experienced.
Once you get into like remote Vietnam, and it's pretty novel, really. Like, especially the Philippines has so many minority cultures as well, but they're so much more assimilated. And I think Vietnam's had this like perfect. I think the roads were just not good enough for so long that they stayed so separated. And now all that's changed. But I mean, even when I first came to Vietnam, you literally had to go by train to Sapa because the roads just weren't doable, or they just took so damn long. So that overnight to train thing, which is still popular, was the only way you could really realistically get there. And so that wasn't that long ago. Now, like, the roads everywhere are just so good. So I think it's going to break down. I do think that like most of those minority cultures will assimilate now quite quickly. The young people are quite like that, which is quite sad. But then also maybe there's like the development side of things, and those communities, there's a lot more opportunity for them as well. But yeah, it was like, I think it's like a perfect culture for that. Like, the fact that there are so many different like individual niches that you can see and explore, and that are still so distinctly different. Cambodia is not like that. Laos has a lot of Hmong people, but other than that, not really. Thailand is a little bit in the north, but again, largely assimilated, I think.
Okay, let's dive into some of the sort of like weirder, what the fuck kind of things you've seen done on camera, like classic like eating experiences on the Best Ever Food Review show, but then also I think recently on your channel you've been doing some incredible thing. I'm very curious about some of your more recent projects, like the one where we went to Indonesia and we're in the tofu factories where they're burning plastics, and like seems like a bit of a different branch out into a more like investigative or like intense kind of journalism. So what's your interest in that? How does that sort of story, where does it come from?
I mean, none of that is deliberate, like at all. Like, if it does come across as more investigative or anything like that, that's not my intent. It's like, I genuinely, I mean, most of my ideas, I usually try and find like a really shocking or jarring image, something that makes me think like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Something like this, And so when I go to a country, I will find 4 or 5 of those and be like, all right, these are the stories that I'm going to tell. And I will research them to every extent possible about what I'm going to find. But I find that, like, without fail, whatever you come across on the ground is not that, and you have to change the story.
Let's get behind the scenes a bit then. Map out your timeline of a project, and either broadly or picking an example.
Yeah, so it takes me it takes a full month to research and plan a trip. So usually I try and find and I have 2 full-time producers now. So it's like, we have to find and get contacts at those 4 or 5 crazy ass ideas and find out as much detailed information as I can. And there's varying levels of how detailed you can get. Again, in that tofu instance at all, we didn't even think we were going to be able to film in the village at all. So, sometimes you're like, all right, well, let's put a morning aside and maybe we can do it. And then you have to, of course, be able to pivot on the day. But yeah, typically it takes like a month to plan, put everything together, and then I try to shoot everything within 10 days. That's usually not that possible, so maybe it bleeds over a little bit, but essentially that's how it works. And the idea is that by the time I come back, the next shoot is kind of like underway. And obviously this is where I'm at now. Like, originally I had to plan and shoot and do a lot of the pre-production myself. So it was a lot harder, but that's generally the idea. But the tofu example specifically, I just seen these crazy images of entire Indonesian villages that just with mounds of trash and cooking tofu right next to it and burning it right there. And I was just like, I gotta see this. This can't be real. And then I rocked up at the village and they just welcomed me in, man. And I was really clear to everyone. I had big cameras, I had whatever else, and I tried the tofu and I just found that I could walk factory to factory and shoot as much as I wanted, and no one really gave me any mind. It was kind of, it was
that's sort of phenomenal. And it's so in other words, you had no fixer on the ground.
I did. So but that's why we thought we couldn't shoot that.
Oh, okay.
So I had a fixer on the ground who knew the location, who found the location for me, and that we'd scouted the area. There was a village that had caused a big stir maybe 5 or 6 years ago because they had been, it was like a plastic sorting village, and a lot of the village trash that they were sorting was imported, and so it was like widely condemned, this importation of Western trash, and then the whole village was just like, people sorting on their backyard, and there was trash everywhere. That's what I thought the story was going to be. Along the way, we'd seen photos of the tofu village, and I said, hey, if possible, we need to film this. And the word from the fixer on the ground was, there's no way that's possible.
Yeah.
And so yes, I had a fixer who thought that it wasn't possible. And we just stopped on the way, and like, lo and behold, I could get as much access as I wanted, really.
Another classic is like sharks, the shark video. So I thought your take on the shark thing is interesting. In this case, it was a village that's going, what's the way, nose to tail, right? They're doing nose to tail shark processing.
Yeah.
So tell me about how that story developed and the experience of going there and shooting it and everything.
So that's in Lombok. Again, same thing. I'd actually gone there to shoot the Nyale Worm Festival, which is like the sea worms that pop out and like explode and you can eat them. And that was just like a nightmare to film, and filming at night. And we were shooting a lobster thing there as well. And then the sharks. And the sharks were a nightmare, an absolute nightmare, because the boats only come in on certain days. They go out for like 14, 15 days at a time, so you have no idea whether you can or can't film it. It's obviously incredibly sensitive. No one wants you there for obvious reasons. And yeah, so I don't know, but like I got lucky on one morning when I went there, they had the sharks, and I don't try to plan out my storyline or what I'm going to think. So really I just shoot whatever it is in there and like capture like what I genuinely think of the story. I take notes as I go, and then I rewatch the footage as I write my voiceover script, and whatever the opinion is that I share at that time was hopefully was what I came to whilst I was there and the way it felt. And when I was there, and what it genuinely felt like was, talking to these guys at the Shark Smokery, they'd been doing it for 70 years. Like, it was a genuine culture there. It was like a genuine thing. Yeah. I didn't get the vibe that this was actually maybe there was shark fin fishing back then at the time as well, and that maybe that started all off, but I really got the vibe that this has become a big part of Lombok's culture and that it should exist with or without it. And I just got to believe that there's some sustainable way to make a shark fin fishery. It might have more limits. It probably almost definitely involves like stricter regulation about which species they do keep, because there's definitely none of that. I mean, I saw manta rays getting ripped out, and there's all kinds of stuff. But again, the overwhelming feeling that I got was not that it was like that this was something that should be entirely shut down. I just think that there has to be a way to regulate some of the more sustainable shark species. I know it's probably controversial, but that genuinely was the feeling I got when I was there.
That's interesting. That makes me think of both Inuit people in northern Canada, but also in Iceland, two beautiful, stunning, incredible places with their own incredible, unique cultures. Yeah. And both of them have, sort of time immemorial traditions of whaling, right? And a whaling that is totally different than the sort of Japanese mega whaler ship that you see on TV, and that is what's so reactionary, I think. I guess in Canada, there are certainly specific regulations for Indigenous people versus like commercial fisheries.
Yeah, I get the same vibe, like honestly, and I would love to shoot, same thing they have in Indonesia, like I would love to try and shoot the whaling that they do there as well, the small scale whaling. But I don't know, it's probably a personal bias on mine. I am typically more in favor of preserving a culture. So it's like of like a human culture. And again, maybe that comes with very heavy regulation, maybe that comes with very heavy limits on how many can be harvested and whatnot. I ate dugong in Australia with Aboriginal people on Sonny's channel. I've eaten green turtle, which is completely illegal for Australians outside of certain contexts. And same thing, there's legal loopholes that are put in place to preserve certain cultures, and I'm like all in favor of that stuff.
So I've eaten dog here in Hanoi on multiple occasions, and I've eaten dog in Pleiku, and I actually grew up a vegetarian. So my parents are like intense vegans or PETA people, and I don't know whether you were or not, but certainly part of my travels abroad, I used to work in restaurants. I was influenced by the whole Anthony Bourdain thing and his sort of philosophies and ideas, and to me, when it came down to it in the moment, it was that, right? It was just like uncles handing me food, handing me drink, and me thinking, what could be more rude as a foreigner, as a guest, than to reject these people's food and reject their drink, right? Just like I couldn't imagine anything more, just that, anything literally more rude, literally more of a like rejection of who they were than to be like, turn my nose up at them and be like, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm actually disgusted by your food, so I can't touch it. And this isn't like anything special. We're talking about like a Bia Hoy on the corner, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious about that aspect of it, the food and how the food ties into culture.
Like, I think it's a natural hook. It gives you a subject. And I also think that, like, and then food is just so inherently linked with culture, which again is the main thing I want to explore. So it's like, without that, I find that it's like hard to get that prism into that world. Like, how and why do you do this thing? And then everything else kind of opens up. So it's like, I think without the food, it would be very hard to do. Although, again, I've done a lot now on cultural objects. I've done a lot on knives that do really well. And then in many ways, there's a kind of a similar thing. You're an object that has this whole cultural array around it, and there's a making process. So it's like, if I have those ingredients, I can usually make the story. And so yes, I guess that's like why the food. And also I find like I guess I'm naturally drawn to more extreme foods or more bizarre foods because again they lead to more unusual or more out there cultures, which is also what I'm after. And I'm fascinated by the fact that no matter how extreme the food is, even if I can't actually enjoy it at the time because there's too much of a mental block, usually I can at least see why this is in the culture, like why, like something clicks. Like a really good example is bamboo worms. No, sorry, not bamboo worms, coconut worms. The big ones with like giant mandibles. Oh man, they're huge in Vietnamese film. You'll find them in Saigon at a lot of the beer houses around here. Oh man, all right, you've got to look up these things. So they're huge grubs. They're like the size of my thumb. You have to rip off their heads before you eat them because they will literally punch a hole straight through your stomach. And so and they are like one of the hardest things to eat, even to this day, after eating all kinds of crazy stuff, because they're so big, so strong, and like they pulsate in your chopsticks, and they're alive. Eating live stuff is really hard.
Yeah.
And so you just have the whole combination: gnarly looking creature, danger, it's pulsating, everything. But the craziest bit is like if you can actually man up and force yourself to eat it, you instantly get it. It's like it explodes. It has this coconut creamy flavor. Like it is. If you could force yourself to be purely objective, you would have to agree that it tastes good. It's not possible because of everything else. Because you can't unsee the mandibles. Because you can't like undo the emotions. And I asked Peter from Angang, a Michelin star chef. Like he cooked it for me at the end of the episode that we did on it. And I said, I said to him like, Peter, like why do you have coconut worms on the menu? And I thought he'd give me some like big spiel about how it was like Vietnamese culture and all this shit. And he just said because they taste good.
Yeah.
And it's like. And so yeah, there's often like a really like simplistic answer, but yeah, I don't know. I'm fascinated that usually, no matter how crazy it is, it kind of makes sense.
I get that. I think, and for me, the hardest thing I ever ate is the live things, those octopuses and sole that like climb around your face. I literally found it difficult to eat. Like again,
I don't think that would be really tough. I've done live squid, but octopus would be. Well.
They're very. They're difficult to eat. They literally like start crawling out of your mouth even after they die. When you've killed them by biting through them, they continue to like move around your fucking face.
Yeah, that sounds.
But the flip side for that is, it was an interesting experience because you're smack dab in the heart of the most modern, beautiful 21st century city. Yeah. I was going to Seoul on a trip coming back and forth between Canada and Vietnam, and Seoul felt more modern than my hometown, Toronto.
Course, right?
Way cleaner, way nicer.
Yeah.
Certainly in a different kind of developmental state than Vietnam.
Yep.
But here's this tradition, that's clearly like deeply rooted in something Korean, right? Some Korean past and culture and history that by preserving the food tradition, they preserved who they are, right? And again, I don't know that there's a way to say that, but it's so clear that that's an illustrative of that point.
I think it's something about like really modern places that still have a cultural food. Like I've always thought about if and when and how I would do dog. I've never eaten dog, and doing it on camera would be interesting. And like there's the extremes, right? There's the whole like, there's the hill tribes that still do it, and then there's like countries like Seoul and Korea, right? Like it's crazy that that's still like a thing there. And so both those angles are like fascinating. Again, I'm not sure I'd ever do it.
Whatever. I grew up in the West. I had a pet dog. I had pet cats. I think You know, I've watched you not only eat rat, but seemingly really enjoy it. That one by wonder, you got into the Mekong rat. I mean, I lived in New York and San Francisco. I lived in some rat-infested cities. The other day, I picked one up off of my like front lawn in Da Nang. It was at least the size of my quadriceps. So, okay, tell me about this. For a cultural artifact, are you holding or are you smelling the guy's smoked dead foot? So that's about as, because this is a beyond a next level of cultural taboo, right? You're faced with a human foot. It smells like beef jerky.
I both held and smelled his foot, and another guy's like just basically like soaked in alcohol severed arm, and that was like even harder, to be honest, because he was like much rawer for him. It was much fresher. Like he was still like very much emotionally attached to his arm.
You can probably still feel it.
I don't know. It was like, yeah, those are some kind of like, there are definitely some moments where I'm shooting where you got to catch yourself and just feel like, man, this is such a surreal experience.
Yeah.
And that's an extreme belief. Like, yeah, I mean, now I can't even remember the...
Yeah, so tell us about it for the viewers. So it's the idea is that they're going to be reconnected to their body after burial, right?
Yeah,
or like
right.
afterlife.
And I think, man, I can't remember now. Man, people are going to kill me for this, but I believe it's the Thai people.
Yeah, we can edit out anything you want, obviously.
But they essentially believe that if they lose a limb whilst they're alive, that they need to be buried with it in order to be whole once again in the afterlife. So they usually, historically, and like losing limbs may be more common in Vietnam because of the war and whatnot as well in the past, right? And a lot of UXOs. So it's actually like it's a thing there. And so typically the way all these like minority cultures work, especially
in the north, is they have a fire running 24/7 in the center of their homes, and that's how they preserve stuff because they don't have refrigeration. So if they lose a limb, it just makes sense. They hang up that limb with everything else, along with the meat, the chicken, the tea that they're saving for later in the week. And so you just have like a human foot or a human arm like hanging above the fire pit. And nowadays they do add in like a couple more steps, like they soak it in alcohol as well and then smoke it. So I've sort of seen it at various different stages, but yeah, it was again looking for the more out there extreme cultures that I could find, coming across that. As soon as I saw a photo, I was like, I got on the next flight. I was like, yeah, take me there.
What's something I didn't ask you that I should have asked, or that maybe you came in here expecting to talk about, a story you wanted to share that we didn't get to?
I'm passionate in general about like Southeast Asia. Like I think Bangkok is one of my favorite cities because it's just like this, it's like this perfect melting pot city. And Thailand seems totally different from Bangkok itself. Like Bangkok just feels like its own beast. It's this total melting pot. You go on the subway, you hear all these different languages, all these different like cultures, this thing. And I think Hong Kong at least had that. I don't know if it still does, so it'd be interesting. And I think in a way, those kind of cities like Hong Kong and like Bangkok are able to capture that in a non-sterile way that somewhere like Singapore does. Like whenever I visit Singapore, has like the core of that, and some of the sort of like the smaller suburbs have their own vibe like that, like Little India and stuff. But I don't know, for whatever reason, it doesn't have the charm to me of somewhere like Bangkok does. And I will say, like, even though now I'm like an entirely based around Vietnam guy, I travel so much now, like my favorite country tends to shift a lot. And I increasingly really love like the Philippines and Indonesia. And so it's odd how those things happen. Maybe you become like overly saturated with a certain place, or you just like, you really begin to appreciate more of these other places. But yeah, I think like nowadays, like I think if I were to redo this whole like expat journey thing, maybe I'd choose Indonesia, maybe I'd choose Philippines. I think they're both like amazing cultures. Cambodia now is like really in its kind of like heyday for me. Like when I first visited way back when, I sort of saw Cambodia as depressing. Like it seemed like it had no future. They'd killed off their whole educated class. It felt like the economy was in the drain. It was so poor, it was so impoverished. And now it's much more Chinese influence, but it kind of, I see that insane growth that I felt when I first visited Vietnam. If someone's like out there like thinking about life in Southeast Asia, I'd advise them to do the same sort of thing I did. It's like, come here and see what vibes with you. Because again, like I don't know if I came here now, if I would still choose Vietnam. Because it just has to mash with where you're at in life at the time. Bourdain always had this, judge is a place by how soon he starts talking himself into like, oh, I could live here. I like never had that about Cambodia, ever. But then on recent shoot trips there, I get it hard. Like, it just has this perfect magic of, I think, what you're talking about, of this, like, finally there's some momentum. It doesn't feel all that depressing anymore. But you still have the crazy wild side. Right, yeah. So it's like, it's a real nice cocktail. I really like that place. Like, if I had friends moving here now, I would be like, I think the number one spot I'd still say to people is Da Nang. I still think Da Nang is maybe the perfect Southeast Asian. I mean, to me, it has just about everything. Like great hospitals, world-class airport, beaches right there. There's no traffic like there is everywhere else in Vietnam. Yeah. But again, like, I think Phnom Penh, again, especially with the airport, especially with the new airport as well, like Phnom Penh also has this US dollar thing. Like, it's kind of like a really nice mix. If you're not that kind of person that just kind of wants a bit more modern of a lifestyle. Again, if you want like really everything seems almost like the West with cheaper costs, then maybe Thailand's still the one, or Kuala Lumpur.
I think Da Nang will be unrecognizable in a decade.
Especially now that they've expanded it to take over
Quang Nam and like everything merged.
Right. Yeah, so it's like a giant district now.
Yes.
And again, when I first moved here, like the premier beach town was Nha Trang, but it's very much not now. Like, well, maybe it's like 50-50 now, but at least the one with the momentum is Da Nang.
No, it's Da Nang.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think, if it weren't for hiring, if you don't have to hire locals, then like, I think that's maybe the only drawback.
Decision to come to Ho Chi Minh, I guess for business reasons, right? For HR and hiring.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like the Saigon has all the university, like no matter where you live in Vietnam, like there are universities in Nha Trang, Da Nang, whatever, but a lot of kids from rural towns will go to the big cities, Hanoi or Saigon. And so it's like they're natural hiring hubs. I find the English is way better here than it is in central Vietnam. And I especially something that's kind of niche, like video editing, which was mainly what I was hiring for at the time. That was like impossible to find. So I did have one. I mean, my first editor, who is still with me, was from Da Nang. So, but it was finding subsequent ones, so it was impossible. So, and here it's still hard. Like, hiring's always hard, I guess, for different businesses. But I find it much easier here. I mean, and you're not asking people to. There, I kept finding that I'd get applicants that you were having to ask to move, and that stuff. Because again, it's just Da Nang is much more of a international businesses are moving there, foreigners are moving there. Locals still think it's like no way. They don't want to be moving back to the countryside. You go the other way, right? So it's like, I don't think it's really growing domestically.
Tell me, what does your production team look like here in Saigon and Ho Chi Minh?
It's like, I always hated being on camera. Like, I mean, so much of my stuff, especially early on, was like close to pure voiceover. Right? Like, I just was really uncomfortable with it. That's why I still do so much voiceover, because it just became a style. Right? So I was uncomfortable with being in front of camera. And then I was definitely uncomfortable putting anything out that resembled like a low effort vlog. So I had to make it feel like it was something. So it was more that I was just shit at it. And the only way I could feel comfortable with publishing something was by over polishing it. Right? And so now it's kind of become a thing. But now I have 2 editors, 2 producers. And it's like a small, I try to do it like $1,000 an episode, at least for international shoots. And I sound like a lot of money. That's like really hard. That's like, by the time, especially if I'm flying a camera guy. So it's like, so I should say, like, so some of the stuff I solo shoot, some of the stuff I shoot with a camera guy. Usually I bring a camera guy with me. And so by the time you're like double flights, double hotels, if you need a fixer, it gets quite tricky to do something under $1,000 an episode. So yeah, I think that might sound like a lot. That's like nothing for if you want to do something polish-wise. So, and I've explored trying to do things solo shot. And they do just as well. I mean, some of my Tofu episode I shot entirely myself, and that has 3 million views, So it's not like necessarily you're going to get any more views by taking that second camera guy. But frequently I regret it. Frequently I find something that I'm like, I'm never going to be able to shoot that again. It was so special, or it was an event, it needed another angle or whatever. I find that it's usually worth sacrificing. And yeah, it's hard. You never know. If you ever... I'm still not at the stage where I can like just bank profits every trip or do whatever. I still have good months and bad months, and the good ones have to pay for the bad ones.
So are you AdSense funded then?
100%.
And one more thing. If you also want to turn your experience in Southeast Asia into a real profitable business, Scan this QR code on the screen or use the link in the description below to sign up for incorporation and accounting services with Awesome in Singapore right now.